Right, let's talk about weight loss. So this is a subject that is really rather dear to my heart because back in the dim and distant past, when I was but a small child, I was really rather fat. How fat? The exact weight number that I quote does vary, I'll admit that, but somewhere in the region 105 to 110 kilos at the towering height of 5'7", so not good at all. That was where I peaked when I was about 18 years old. And the reason I was so very fat was very simple. I didn't exercise and I ate too much crap. So my story was a typical one as a kid, or a fat kid anyway. I would regularly go out and buy lots of crappy sugary foods with my pocket money. So my parents would give me £5 a week. This is some of my earliest memories here, going back to when I was perhaps 10 years old. I'd go up to the village, Stubbington village actually. It was about 400 metres down the road from where we lived. And I'd have a £5 note in my pocket, and I would spend all of that £5 on crap. I'd spend it all on chocolate sweets. You can get a lot for £5 back in the early 2000s. Don't know how much a Freddo was back then, but hey. Anyway, that continued on. I recall having money to go to school canteen back before the healthy eating craze hit schools, which I'm fully supportive of, although I understand is kind of backslidden somewhat in the last few years because of budget cuts and stuff. There's my inner socialist coming out. Anyway, I would buy cakes, sausage rolls. I remember going at break, they'd sell these sponge cakes with really thick chocolate icing on top. I'd probably have 2 or 3 of those if I had money. That's what I'd spend. I didn't exercise. I mean, my parents did their best. They tried to keep me active, but I chose sedentary sport, horse riding, so the horse was getting a workout, not me. And what else? Hockey. But I didn't play on the pitch. As soon as I was able to play in goal, I played in goal. Because, got to stand around. I vividly remember one game. I did so little physical activity. It was like March. It wasn't even particularly cold. It was quite windy. And my dad had to come out and shield me from the wind because we were absolutely dominating the other team. I think I moved probably all of about 5 metres the entire game, which is pretty bad, really, isn't it? Thought that would count as exercise. Obviously it didn't. Obviously PE as well. Did the absolute minimum in PE, would try and get out of it at any point. Feign asthma events and all sorts of other things like that. It's my firm contention that all fat people are liars, and oh boy was I a liar. Certainly to get out of things I didn't want to do that involved exercising or eating healthily. So yeah, I was a very fat, very fat young man. This obviously made me very sad. Got no female attention. My first girlfriend was when I was 17, but even then she actually didn't want to be seen in public with me, if you believe it. There are other issues behind that. Specifically, I was very unpopular because I wasn't a very nice person to be around. But we walked across the college car park one day, and I was holding her hand, and then she pulled her hand away from me. I was like, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I was just embarrassed." Because her friends were nearby and they could see us, and she didn't want to be seen holding my hand. She later told me that she actually only stayed. She dumped me when she went off to university. I had a gap year, and she went off to university, and she told me that she only stayed with me through that second year in college because I would give her a lift. Which is literally the only reason we were together. So go me. Anyway, I decided that I wanted to do something about this rather crappy situation. Get into shape. But obviously running was out of the question because that would involve effort. It was uncomfortable. And I wanted to be big and muscular. You know, I was aware of bodybuilding at the time. Because I think the sport's degenerate now. But back then I really looked up to, you know, the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger and things. I wanted to look like him. Desperately wanted to look like them. And I had a cousin who was in the Navy and he did a lot of lifting weights, and he told me that, you know, you go to the gym and you just lift weights and you get to sit around for a bit and you lift some more weights, and you know, it's quite a sedate type of physical activity. So ideal for a fat guy, which is incidentally why I recommend weightlifting in the first instance for fat people, to get them doing something, you know, because it doesn't involve necessarily getting hot, sweaty and sore, which, as I say, fat people have an aversion to. I know I certainly did, and bountiful experience in the intervening years has only affirmed that belief is correct, in fact. So off I went to a gym, but I was very embarrassed to go to the gym because I was in a horrendous physical state. So I wanted to find a really quiet gym. I wouldn't go to one of the chains. There were lots of chain gyms near me, big LA Fitness. I used to drive past one of those every day on my way to college. Didn't want to go there because too busy, lots of people, and I was fat and disgusting. So I found, or rather I was introduced to a gym called the Don Styler Physical Training Centre, owned by the eponymous Don Styler, which was an old Crimean War era hospital, field hospital, where they would bring wounded service people back. It was in the middle of some woodland in Gosport, Hampshire, and yeah, even when it was busy, you'd rarely see more than 5 or 6 people there. I went really early in the morning because I didn't want to be seen while I was training. Again, super embarrassed. And there was a lovely collection of older gentlemen there, all in there. I think the youngest was like 62, if I remember rightly, at the time. This is back in 2009. And yeah, the oldest guy was in his mid-70s, like maybe potentially even late 70s. And they'd been training every Monday, Wednesday, Friday without fail at that gym since it opened in the either late 50s or early 60s. I can't remember exactly which. I used to know the exact date it opened, but God, I've forgotten now. Too much other stuff clogging up my brain. So I started lifting weights with these older men and mimicking the routines that they followed. To say this Monday, Wednesday, Friday idea. It was I didn't actually start doing that. I actually started training much more frequently. It was about 5 days a week I was going, weekdays, and I'd have the weekends off still. And it was it was Don who saw me doing some very strange routine. Made no logical sense whatsoever. Far too much emphasis on chest and arms. Too many, lots of machine work, lots of cable work, lots of dumbbell work. Obviously I was very weak at the time, weak and pathetic. So that type of training was of no real benefit. I mean, my arms were growing, to be fair. I might have just been the fat. But he pointed me in the direction of a basic schedule on his wall and said, just do that 3 days a week. So I did, and I started to get a lot stronger. Now, I dabbled in some cardio, at the time. Bear in mind, stress dabbled. I didn't pursue it though, because I lived near the beach. It was about probably a mile and a half to the beach and back, and I remember trying to run the distance once, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't, and it made me feel pretty rubbish actually, especially when compared to how well I was doing in the gym. I was getting really strong following that basic schedule, because as you might expect, when you're fat, mass moves mass, you can put on a lot of strength fairly quickly if you're following a logical routine, kind of a full body 3 days a week built around the big barbell lifts sort of affair, squats, presses, pulls, deadlifts, that sort of thing. So yeah, I couldn't manage the run. Down near killed me. So yeah, that was embarrassing, so I stopped doing that, which if I had my time again, I would definitely have made a different decision in that regard. So yeah, that took me up to about the Christmas, and my physique definitely changed for the better in those intervening 3 months. So I started training properly in the September of 2009, maybe the late August, early September of 2009. And by the Christmas, yeah, I was doing really well. I hadn't changed my diet at all. And this is what I would describe as phase 1 of the weight loss system that I recommend people. So basically, start training, start lifting weights 3 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever. Probably 2 days a week for men with jobs and families and whatnot to attend to. Generally better off doing 2 days a week, I think. Younger guys without responsibilities and things do well with 3, but yeah, older guys with other stuff on. And by older, I define myself as an older guy now. I'm a 33. So once you're in your 30s with other stuff going on, 2 days a week lifting, particularly if it's something you've never done before, so you're going to harbour a degree of resentment towards it. No matter how enthusiastic you are about the idea of losing weight, you're still going to harbour a high degree of resentment towards the act of exercise itself, because if you didn't, well, you wouldn't be fat. Excuse the cars. I'm out on my morning walk trying to find a quiet route, but it seems everyone and their dog's out this morning. It's Saturday at 7 o'clock, why are people out? Anyway, phase 1. So yeah, lift weights. Things I would add to it if I had my time again be some form of conditioning. So running, sprinting, probably just running, cycling for the fat man or woman. And the key thing to wrap your head around with conditioning at this point is how little you will be able to do. If you're at a point where you're overweight or obese, your base of cardiovascular fitness is going to be dire. I don't care if you want to argue with me on that, because I'm right. Your base of cardiovascular fitness is going to be dire. It is not going to be what you think it is when you start challenging it with actual exercise, i.e. running, cycling, potentially sprinting, which will actually just be fast running for a very short distance, because sprinting is a... more cars! Because sprinting is a discrete activity in of itself that requires specific training to get the form right. I'm digressing, not relevant. I would add in some conditioning work though, that you can manage if you are a fat person, or just a hypothetical fat person could manage, which may only be a half-mile run, very slowly. You know what? It's fine. Does the job. Does the job for now, which is doing something and embedding the habit, making training, exercise a fixed, firm part of your life on a level of importance with eating, sleeping and working. Something that you have to do to survive, not a hobby. Training is not a hobby. Oh, wow, here comes agricultural vehicles now. I'm going to turn off onto a side, just a river path in a second. Why are there tractors out this morning? Oh, blimey. Right, we're off the main road. So I'd supplement the lifting with conditioning. As well as conditioning, I would, which I didn't do, but I would do it if I had my time again, is what I'm doing now, which is taking a walk every day, without fail, come rain nor shine, for at least 45 minutes, if not an hour or more. To start with, it probably will be 45 minutes. Hey, maybe even half an hour is all you can manage. That's also fine. But the more you do it, the longer your walks will be. You will want to walk more. I actually am now at a point where I genuinely start to struggle if I go more than 6 hours without a bit of a walk. So I take a walk first thing in the morning, with either alone or with Jess and the kids, and that's normally about 5 kilometres. And on training days I walk to and from the gym, so that's another 5 kilometres. But on non-training days I'll do at least 2.5, which is kind of round to the local co-op and back. Do at least 2.5 in the afternoon or the evening. As I say, I get stiff and feel garbage if I don't. But that's a relatively new innovation for me in the grand scheme of my 15 years of training at this point. Just the one walk, half an hour, 45 minutes was perfectly adequate for a long time. So that's what I would do, and that would be phase 1. Notice how I haven't discussed the thorny issue of diet, even though I'm talking about weight loss yet. There's good reason for that. Diet is not something that is really worth paying all that much attention to until exercise is that fixed, firm part of your life, as I've just mentioned. Why is that? Well, if you try to tackle more than one thing at once, and so if we're talking about significant lifestyle changes here, if you try and tackle more than one thing at once, you will, well, it's probably more accurate to say you're far more likely to burn out in short order, because you're trying to build upon foundations of sand. If you're fat and out of shape, there's a lot that's gone into that: diet, exercise, other lifestyle factors. That's why you're in this condition. So if you try and change all of that at once, you've not built the foundation. So someone who is thin and in shape and muscular and has been all their life, they have a really solid foundation. So if they want to go on a health kick, just to take themselves to the next level, they can tackle all these things at once. There have been times in my training life where I've made big changes to lots of diet, exercise and lifestyle factors all at once, and had great success. I've not necessarily maintained all of those changes because I didn't have to. Some of them I have though, but I got the results I wanted in the time frame I wanted them. But for someone who is just starting out, and if you're fat and out of shape, you are just starting out. I don't really care if you've been waddling about the gym staring at your phone a few days a week for the last 10 years. I don't care. If you're fat and out of shape, you haven't been training and eating and living properly. It's just not possible, unless you've got some sort of serious and enduring mental or physical health condition, or both, in which case none of what I'm saying is relevant to you. You're probably not even listening. But there will be some people who are listening who would perhaps like to claim that they have some impediment that they actually don't. People who are genuinely physically and mentally, or both, incapable of of getting into shape and staying in shape. Never have I ever had any of those people take issue with what I say. It's always people who want to claim that they are mentally or physically too ill to look after themselves, that have a problem with my message. Similar to the TRT bros, actually. You know, those men having a midlife crisis who lie to their doctors to get prescribed TRT because they have some moral issue with taking steroids, or they're worried about the safety of steroids, so they see TRT as like safe and legitimate steroids because they've managed to get a doctor to agree to it. Much the same way as those people who, you know, diagnose themselves with ADHD because they've been watching TikTok, possibly because they have TikTok brain, not ADHD. Anyway, they go to these diagnosis mills. A friend of mine, she's an eminent clinical psychologist, who I won't name for fear of doxing her, but she has said to me that she's explained the business model of these clinics. They're often, the assessments are often not even done by medically registered people. They're medically trained, but they're trained in the same way as a healthcare assistant is trained to do these tick box assessments, overseen by a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist who signs off on. You know, so that's a massive digression. But the point is that people who genuinely have a problem training, eating and living right due to factors outside their control, I've never had any of them come to me and say, Phil, you're out of order. You know, good friends with people in some of those situations, actually. So, anyway, where were we? Yes, diet. If you try and tackle your diet before training is embedded in your life, you're going to have a problem. But once training is embedded in your life, and it's something that you genuinely believe that you cannot do without, okay? You cannot visualise your life without the gym in it, and without running in it, or cycling, whatever your choice is, and walking every day. You can't see living in any other way, as I can't, and many of my successful clients can't. Then it is time to start looking at your diet. But when we're talking about diet, what you need to understand is that there are many grifters in the nutrition diet space. I'd go so far as to say there are more grifters in the nutrition and diet space than there are in the training space, actually. And as a result, lots of very unhealthy and borderline dangerous things that can precipitate legitimate eating disorders have been made normal or even standard. Like take calorie counting, for example. You know, your standard advice when someone says to you, or someone says, oh, how do I lose weight? The standard answer you receive is, well, eat 500 fewer calories a day than you burn. That's the pretty standard advice. And it's technically correct. It is technically correct. The problem, as with all these things, is in the details, the application specifically. Because how do you know that you're eating 500 fewer calories per day than you are burning? How do we answer this question? Well, first thing you have to do is calculate your basal metabolic rate. And the UK government says that, well, the UK government bases its calorie recommendations off of a combination of the basal metabolic rate and, I believe, some exercise and activity factors. Not entirely sure how they get to that calculation. I've gotten ahead of myself. I need to go back a little bit. Let's rewind. Hang on. First thing you need to do is calculate basal metabolic rate. And there are a certain formula that you can use to do this. But there's a big but. Those modifiers that I just mentioned before I was supposed to mention them to get to that point, right? So you one modifier that you would add to your to achieve a basal metabolic rate calculation would be your activity. How much activity are you doing? How active are you? And these are often couched in nebulous terms like lightly active, moderately active, very active. Well, what's moderately active? You know, what's very active? What's lightly active? They will offer some descriptions of what, you know, moderately active or lightly active or very active look like, but it's my experience, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I'm right, that people vastly overestimate the amount of activity that they do. So I'm just making this up because I'm out for a walk, I've not got things in front of me, but a description of very active, for example, based on what I've read of these things, might be, intense weightlifting 3 days a week, or 4 days a week, or 5 days a week, right? And they'll usually add a time factor to that, so for 60 minutes. Well, I think most people who go to my gym, which is a warehouse style gym, it's got lots of guys who are very much into lifting weights, bodybuilding, powerlifting. I suspect most of them would think that they are very active because they lift weights with intensity 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. But then if we look at actually what they're doing when they're at the gym, very rare is it to see any of them breaking a sweat. I actually called Jess out on this recently, my wife Jess. She was saying that she's struggling to make progress in the gym, and she follows the same program as me, and well, that's right, she believes that she's training intensely, but she's not, because bless her, the poor girl's not been breaking a sweat, right? So it's the middle of summer here. The gym has spotty air conditioning, let's say. There are points in the gym where it's absolutely arctic because you're having the aircon blown on you, and then there are other parts of the gym that are like a sauna, made up predominantly of the moisture coming from other people's sweat. Not very nice, but hey, I don't go to the gym I go to the gym to feel good. I go to the gym to train. I kind of quite like it, actually. Kind of like the grimier aesthetic, because I'm old school. Anyway, Jess, as I say, she's not been breaking a sweat in the gym, so she's not training intensely. Same goes for probably 90%, 9 out of 10 of the people that I will see in the gym, and I got peak time, kind of 5:30. Very rare is it to see someone breaking a sweat, training hard. They might do the occasional hard set, they might push a set every now and again, they might do a drop set or something like that, but if you look at the majority of their workout, they're actually sat on their ass staring at their phone. That's the reality here, and that's why most guys and girls you see at the gym lifting weights are fat. They're very fat. Even the ones who abuse steroids are fat, because they're not training as hard as they think they are training, and they are eating too much. So right away you can see the issue with setting this BMR so that you can accurately calculate calories. The chances are you are going to spit out a number that's actually far higher than what your BMR actually is, right? And then there comes the next problem, which is, okay, well, now that we know our BMR, let's steel man the argument here. Let's say that it's possible, which I don't believe that it is, to accurately calculate a BMR for dietary purposes, as is advertised by people who promote calorie counting. Let's pretend that what they say is possible. So you've got perfect BMR. Okay, but now you need to monitor the food that's going into your mouth. Yes, you need to track what you're eating, and you have to track what you're eating. Otherwise, you won't know that you're 500 calories below this hypothetically perfect BMR. Also, this is something that irks me too, is my understanding is that basal metabolic rate is just what your body uses at rest, i.e. laying in a bed for basic functions, so breathing, heartbeat, brain activity, cellular metabolism, that sort of thing. I don't think that it's accurate to say that it also includes exercise on top, but that's just me, and I'm probably wrong because I'm not a diet guy, but just an observation. So tracking though, you are going to have to track your intake. Now, how do we do that? Well, it's not just a matter of noting down what you eat. if you want to do it properly. And my argument is that you have to do it properly. If it's otherwise, why do it at all? Yeah, why do it at all? Because you can't track some of the time. You have to track all of the time, and you also have to track. You have to weigh everything. You have to weigh the food to get an accurate measurement of the calories that you're putting into your gob. Yes, you do. And if you don't do that at any point, well, then you no longer have an accurate measurement of your caloric intake. Therefore, you are basically just pissing in. Well, pissing in the wind's not the right phrase, is it? You're just guessing. It's just guesswork. So you're going to all that trouble, and it is trouble, to measure your food, weigh your food, put it into an app. God, that's another thing. You've got to carry a phone around with you all the time. Who wants to carry a phone around with them all the time? I certainly bloody don't. So you're putting everything into an app, weighing and measuring all your food. And then if you don't do that, let's pretend you forget your weighing scales, as happened to a girl I literally saw crying in the gym. I think she was preparing for a bodybuilding show or something. That's another problems with bodybuilding, a conversation for another podcast, but she burst into tears because her weighing scales were broken. So that meant that she couldn't track her food, and she was deadly worried about getting fat. But those issues aside, it's just a lot of bookkeeping, isn't it? You know what? And it's taking your attention away from what actually matters, which is training hard and critically thinking about the things that you're putting in your mouth, rather than following this prescriptive and rather neurotic approach. And the final thing I will say, the final nail in the coffin for calorie counting, is how I see it practiced. Yeah, it's a bit like contraception, isn't it? They say that condoms are 97% effective or whatever when used perfectly, but when used in reality they're 78% effective. Much the same with calorie counting, I think. In theory it's effective, but the way people practice it just isn't. So, for example, I'm going to use Jess as this example again. Poor Jess. She doesn't mind. She says I can talk about her whenever I want, which is nice. She's a lovely girl. She is my heroine. But anyway, Jess. She wanted to do calorie counting against my advice in the lead up to our wedding, and one of the things that I noticed her doing was she was not eating salad. She was not having things like tomatoes and apples and stuff, so that she could use those calories on sweets. Again, it's the sort of thing that fat people do. Jess was very fat, both as a child and into adulthood as well. I was lucky. I defattened myself. By the time I was 20. Between 20 and 21 I defattened myself. Yeah, before I was 21 I defattened myself. But Jess went a lot longer, and her preference was to eat, not anymore, it was to eat things like sweets and chocolate and other garbage. So she would literally use the one of these apps and calories in it for every food. Like, you could scan barcodes and it'd give you the calories and stuff. And she would omit things that she knew were good for her from her diet, and she would instead spend, for want of a better term, those calories on chocolate, crisps, sweets, stuff like that. Now, you can't sit there and tell me that's a good thing. And it's not just Jess that does it. I know I've seen loads of people do it. They tell me they do it all the time, and I just see it. Just see it. And then you get idiots on the internet who say things like, "Oh, calories are calorie, Phil." Well, not Phil. They're not talking to me. But "Oh, calories are calorie. It doesn't matter." It does matter. It does matter. It might not technically matter from a weight loss point of view, although there is some evidence to suggest that it does. That a calorie is not, in fact, a calorie. Something I'm inclined to agree with, given my slightly better average knowledge of anatomy and physiology from my background. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I know a bit more than your average PT on that front, and it does make sense to me in my understanding of these things. But sorry, I should dodge a gentleman. Yeah, so here's some evidence to say calorie is not a calorie. And even if a calorie is a calorie, you can't tell me that reducing, healthy micronutrients, vitamins and minerals to eat sugar and processed fats and other gross stuff is going to be good for your health and longevity. Because, it's not. It's just not. So that's just one of the things that I don't advocate when it comes to diet. Don't advocate. Just to give the other side some credit, calorie counting, calorie controlled diets absolutely do have their place. If they've been prescribed to you by a doctor or a registered dietitian, then don't listen to me, do what the medical expert says, because there absolutely are places for these things. Just one example, the rehabilitation of people with eating disorder. The calories would be, I could imagine being an appropriate tool to be used there, but again, I'm not an expert, so don't take that as advice. I need to say that because someone would. Likewise, I'm aware that when they someone who's going for bariatric surgery, so get gastric band, gastric sleeve, that sort of thing, they will say, you need to have X calories a day, and you achieve that by eating these soups or whatever they give them. I don't know if they do that in every case, but certainly watched enough documentaries on the subject, I've seen it done. So, but for general weight loss purposes, fat loss purposes, for generally healthy people, I don't think it's a winner. I think my way's better, which is basically eating the things that you ought to eat. One of the reasons I'm reluctant to talk in depth about diet is because I just find it really boring. Like, if you listen this far into the podcast, right, you're sufficiently to the right of the bell curve to know that you should be eating certain things and probably avoiding other things. I'm not saying don't eat them at all, I'm just saying, not all the time, or to excessive quantities. You know this stuff, so just do it. And again, easier said than done. I actually had an interesting exchange with a chap. I really like him, actually. He's a very, very wise man, about changing people's minds. I don't believe it's possible for me to persuade anyone of anything or change their mind. I just tell the truth. I feel I have a duty to tell the truth insofar as I understand it, and how people receive that, what they do with that information, is entirely their decision. Very occasionally causes people to change their mind, but that's them that's changed their mind. I've not changed their mind. So on diet, when I say, dude or dudette, just eat the stuff you should be eating, and eat less of the stuff that you shouldn't be eating. You don't need me to tell you, like, fruit, vegetables, meat, minimally processed dairy products. Like, that's good for you. It's good for you. You have access to the internet. You can Google or watch a YouTube video on how to make fresh meals from those ingredients very quickly. Now, I cook up a delicious mince thing in about, 10 minutes? 15 minutes it takes to cook. A bit longer if the mince is frozen. I have to defrost it, if the mince isn't frozen, it's literally like 10-15 minutes for me to cook it up. Now, I came down from work to have my lunch the other day, and I was like, I went to the fridge because I put some in the fridge to have, Tupperware. Tupperware, the tool of champions. There wasn't any. And I was mildly irked because I had to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes cooking up another batch. You know, it's not hard, guys, or individual I'm speaking to. This is not difficult. If you don't know how to do it, watch a video, learn. You have access to the internet. You've shown me you have access to the internet because you're listening to my bloody podcast. You know, it's not hard. You just have to want to do it. Hence why I don't try and persuade people to do it, because they're smart enough to know what they should be doing, and if they're not clear on some of the details, they're smart enough to find out those details, and they have access to all the tools they need to find those details. So yeah, I've very little sympathy. In fact, I have no sympathy for people who choose not to. That's not to say I think ill of them. I don't think they're bad people or anything. I respect their choices, and it is a choice. Even if they don't believe they're making a choice, they are making a choice, and I respect their choice. You know, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to coss at them. The truth is, you know what you should be eating. You know what you shouldn't be eating. And do those things. Stop listening to these nutrition diet grifters, just because they're just needlessly complicating this for you. And that's phase 2, believe it or not, of the Phil Tyreman weight loss method, which is clean up your diet. Because in phase 1, I don't think you should address your diet for the reasons I mentioned. But phase 2, it's now time to just clean up your diet. Call it Operation Cleanup. So, yeah, eat all the things that you know you should, rest of the things that you know you shouldn't. Don't worry about quantity at this point, because again, we need to take a phased process. If you're fat, this is something that a lot of fitness professionals don't fully grasp, because most of them have never been fat. They've not been fat like me, like you. They don't fully grasp what it is, the fat psychology of that need to fill your stomach, the need to have big portions, feeling cheated, looking at a plate there with not much food on it and just feeling a bit cheated, you know, going to a restaurant, ordering something that's actually really nice and really tasty, and then it coming to your table, being put in front of you, and then feeling disappointed because it's not a mound of food. They've never experienced that. They don't understand. So that's why I think it's fatal to try and clean up your diet and reduce the size of your portions. Again, this is something that's going to take critical thinking. It's going to take a long time potentially for you to get used to. But just as with phase 1, you don't move forward to phase 3 until you're pretty well satisfied that, just as you now are with exercise, that eating good food, mostly good food, is something that you cannot see yourself doing without. I do not resent my diet in any way. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I also don't feel disgust towards bad food either. It's another thing. I used to think, because I used to listen to a lot of bodybuilders talking about diet, which is a really bad thing to do, by the way. And this guy said that one of the things he would do to combat cravings when he was prepping for a show was look at bad food and then imagine what that would do to him. Imagine being obese and smelly and awful, and summoning feelings of disgust to stop him from eating the food. Now, that sounds like an eating disorder to me, personally. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but that doesn't sound healthy, right? Psychologically healthy. That's what he did. And yeah, I don't do that. I don't need to do it, because I've been patient. And I took the time to wait until I felt like, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with just eating good stuff. Something interesting that happens too is your body starts to crave it. Your body starts, just as you quite possibly crave crap food now, the body does start to crave good food. I know it sounds really distant, and it's a bit like those business gurus and stuff who are driving around a Ferrari. People look at it and go, that's way too far away. I don't even have a car, Could be a similar thing, but it does does happen if you stick at it long enough. In most cases, I can't say it's guaranteed. None of these things are guaranteed. So I'm fairly confident it's just a question of time and whether or not you're willing to actually take the time to wait to see these changes manifest. So that's phase 2. Once you know you are happy eating things that you should be and less of the things you shouldn't, and that's how you foresee yourself living the rest of your life, move on to phase 3, which is portions. So obviously, before I explain phase 3, phase 1 and phase 2 continue. So you're continuing to train, and even though you're going to be eating smaller portions in phase 3, potentially, depends on the amount of activity you're doing, but potentially, you are still going to be eating good stuff and not so much the bad stuff. But yeah, phase 3, it's really just a question of reducing steadily the amount of food on your plate, on those healthy plates, right? And I mean steadily, because you don't have calorie counting as a crutch to fall back on, or weighing your food as a crutch to fall back on. You have to do this by eye. And I encourage clients to ask themselves a question. So I look at a plate and say, look, honestly, is this enough food to, or rather no, is this a sensible amount of food to fuel the activity that I have done or plan to do? Is this enough food or a sensible amount of food to fuel the activity I've done or plan to do? Because what that does is it stops you from being an idiot and starving yourself, essentially. Trying to starve yourself into the ground. Yeah? Because what happens if you cut your portion sizes too drastically because you want to lose weight yesterday or lose fat yesterday is the wheels come off with your training. You start to feel crap, and eventually you just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, I had enough of this, I'm not doing it anymore. So please don't be an idiot. But on the other end of the spectrum as well is, makes you really confront is portion control. Am I being a bit greedy here? Because one of the reasons you're fat is because you're greedy, right? And it's getting that sin of greed under control. Doing battle with that. And as for cheat meals, a lot of people ask me about cheat meals. I don't really like that terminology. Again, I think if you feel the need to have a cheat meal, there's something wrong with your diet. What I do say is eat right 90% of the time. So again, you know what you should be eating, you know what you shouldn't. So if 90% of the time you're eating what you should be eating, that means 10% of the time you can eat what you shouldn't be eating. Or should be eating less of. So it's quite a blunt rule, but I found it very effective. It allows a tremendous degree of flexibility. Say if you're out and about, Jess and I are off out to this fairy garden thing with the kids today, which I'm ever so looking forward to, as you can tell by the excitement in my voice. And I'm sure that I will eat something that I shouldn't eat, or should eat less of, when I'm out at the fairy garden, because I'm away from home. It's a car journey away. Now I could be like one of those degenerate bodybuilders and carry a water cooler, yeah, no, it's the size of some of them though, like a cool box full of pre-prepared food in it, and eat some chicken and some salad or whatever. I used to do that in the dim and distant past, actually. I tried it out as a methodology and I found it wanting. But this eat right 90% of the time rule, and I've known I'm going on this trip for a couple of weeks now. So I've got some pennies in the bank, so to speak. So if I want to eat a scone and a sausage roll, I can eat a scone and a sausage roll and, not worry about falling off the wagon, landing in dietary oblivion and getting fat again. That's really all there is to it. So to recap then, phase 1 is train, lift weights, do conditioning, walk every day. Keep doing that until you feel like you'll never stop. You can't see yourself ever stopping. And you'll know this is the case, right, when you plan a holiday and you're like, okay, well, how am I going to train while I'm on holiday? And you'll either seek out information product, for like a body weight training routine or something, either free or paid, doesn't matter. But you'll be seeking this information out, or you'll deliberately book a hotel for the gym. Yeah. Like, for example, every time I moved around a lot in my early 20s for my career, one of the first things I did when I settled on a location to live was locate the nearest gym. Literally the first thing I would do after unloading all my stuff would be go down and sign up. Yeah, that's how you know. Some people might say that's a sign of an exercise addiction. I'd say those people are just lazy and stupid. So that's how you know. You will lose weight doing this almost certainly, simply by upping your activity. But I caveated, almost certainly. You might not lose weight. If you eat like a proper pig, then obviously you're not going to lose weight. But I certainly did. Jess certainly did. Others I know have, right? Just through upping the activity levels. And phase 2 is addressing your diet. And we're back on the main road. And it's really busy. But bear with me, I've just got to cross a bridge and be back on a quiet street again. I'll go down some side streets. Anyway, phase 2 is eat more of what you know you should and less of what you know you shouldn't. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that. Don't worry about changing your quantities. I mean, if you want to, by all means do. Just don't worry about it too much. Yeah. Just focus on quality. Get that quality up, because your body's been lacking that for a very long time. And again, wait, be patient, wait until you cannot see yourself living in any other way. Wait until you cannot see yourself living in any other way. Again, this should also result in some weight loss, some fat loss. Not as fast as you'll get on a typical 12-week transformation program where they put you on some pants on head stupid diet. No, not as fast as that. No, I would never say that it would be as fast as that, but it will be. You should almost certainly will see some weight loss. Again, if you eat like a pig, even healthy foods, you won't lose weight. But it's much harder to eat too much healthy food because it's fewer calories per gram, basically. Less energy dense. That's energy dense. And again, lots and lots of variables here. If you're eating a lot of like dairy products, cheeses, stuff like that, then you'll probably lose less weight. You may not lose weight at all than if you were to go down kind of the more like chickeny route. But again, doesn't matter. Just get the quality up. Make sure you're getting the quality nutrition. And finally, once you are convinced that you will never ever fall back into old habits because you just don't want to. Again, this isn't a case of moralising or anything like that. It's a case of just genuinely feeling like I don't want to live any other way. This is great. Then we move and we start looking phase 3, the final phase, which is a phase that never ends, has no end. There is no end to phase 3. There will be an end to your weight loss, which you'll hit your weight goal, you will hit your physique goal. Of course you will. But this constant critical thought around, is this a sensible amount of food for me to eat based on the activity I've done and plan to do? Yeah. And it won't always be a heavily conscious exercise. You will quite quickly find that you just naturally eyeball these things. Like I don't ask myself that question. Very rare is it that I ask myself that question. Sometimes I will backslide slightly, if I'm being honest. Sometimes I'll backslide slightly. And when I do, all I do is I start asking myself that question again more deliberately. And it's very quickly apparent that no, I'm eating too much. I'm eating more food than I need for the activity that I'm doing or planning to do. And then I adjust accordingly, again without weighing, measuring my food, without counting calories, without tracking macros, and certainly without using an infernal app. And that's all there is to it. You keep doing it. I've been doing it now without fail for got to be 13 years. yeah, 13 years easy. Sometimes better than others. I've had dalliances into pants on head stupid diets, sort that I just mentioned. Protein shake, mostly protein shake only diet that I did for a little while. I found on some dim and dark corner of the internet, would not recommend. Very, very stupid. And I rebounded hard after that as well. It took me a while to get those good habits that I'd embedded through the three-phase system back once I'd achieved the goal that I set and used that diet to achieve. So that is all I have to say on the matter of weight loss for today. Three-phase system. And that is me done. Signing off.